What's up, everybody? My name is Arctix, and boy, do we have something special for you today. Last night, on March 16th, the Midnight Society staff and developers hosted an AMA in Discord using the Discord events feature to answer a few questions that the community themselves were able to post. What they did is they created a chat channel within their Discord, which was tied to the developer AMA event that they created, and members of the community were able to post questions and react to those questions with an up arrow, in which they were able to go through, choose, and then go ahead and present. The AMA was hosted by Loru, their lead content strategist, and the two members of Midnight Society who were answering the questions were Robert Bowling, their studio head, and Quinn Del Hoyo, the creative director. They went into pretty good detail on a lot of the questions. A lot of the questions weren't able to get answered due to time, but they did go pretty in depth into how they were answering a lot of the questions, and they did the best that they could on a lot of the questions that were there. A lot of them didn't get to be read because there were so many, especially on the heels of them announcing their NFT project and what they're trying to do. Again, the entire thing is optional, but obviously they wanted to quell a lot of the concerns that were out there of people, which is normal for such a hot button issue. I was streaming last night, so I was able to record and capture the entire AMA. And so what you're going to see here in just a second is how the AMA actually went down. Now, a couple of things to note. They did mention that this is more or less the kind of style of Q&A that they're going to be having as the game starts to develop, and as these first 10,000 founders that are going to be selected are going to assist with the development of the game that they plan on introducing. And these are the types of long-winded answers that they expect, and good questions that they hope will come in, obviously, from people that they choose to really help shape and cultivate this game that they plan on releasing for everyone. So sit back, relax, go through it, and at the end of the video, or after it's done, we'll go ahead and reflect on some of the questions that were asked.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, pre-variants, welcome to our first ever Discord developer AMA for Midnight Society. Before we get started, thank you so much from all the devs at Midnight Society for an absolutely incredible day zero. The hype, the energy was immaculate and fantastic. Make sure that if you haven't already, you head to midnightsociety.com and you fill out your founder access pass. This is a limited time engagement. We want to make sure that the core community gets in on all the perks that the Founder Access Pass has to offer. With me on stage today, we have our studio head, Rob, and our director, Quinn. So thank y'all for being here. Those are the two people that are going to be answering our questions. If you have a burning question that is, you're not seeing answered, make sure you put it in the pre-variant AMA chat. I'm going to be monitoring it. If you see a question you have that has already been put in the chat, make sure you upvote it and we'll see it from there. So Rob, Quinn, are you both ready?
Ready.
Ready, NA.
I'm not ready.
Rob's not ready. Okay.
All right, I'm ready. Let's do it.
Okay. Well, I figure we'll start at the top because Billy and Cher was the first one to submit a question ready, just with that copy paste, absolutely ready for when the chat opened up. So thank you, Billy and Cher. First question. Are we sure, can we have private or custom lobbies in the game that we're going to be making?
Are we going to have private or custom lobbies?
Mm-hmm.
That's a really good one. I mean, there's lots of stuff that we are still trying to figure out about the game, especially even at a high level. That's where we're kind of thinking right now. And when it comes to features like that, that's why we have the Founders Access in the program that we're doing, so we could hear the voices of people like you, so we could get this feedback, this discourse back and forth with each other. And that's personally why I'm super excited about what we're doing here at Midnight Society is trying to do this with the fans and with the community. So that's I guess my best answer to that is we are still trying to figure out some of those things, and that's why we want you here along with the ride, so we could hear from you and what you want. What are you interested in? I don't know if you want to add to that, Rob, or whatnot.
Yeah. This is a perfect question because it touches on a lot of very specific minutia of how the game's going to run, how you play together, different options you'll have on different platforms. All really great stuff. Most of this stuff isn't decided yet, right? Like that TTK, like I definitely have my preference. I'm with you, right? Like I love fast TTK. I think there's also a lot of discussion on like potentially different modes that could exist that have varying different TTKs. But these are the exact, everything you just wrote in here, Billy and Chair, these are the exact things that we need to be talking about in these dev roundtables that we bring you guys into. You know, when we talked about day zero, we literally meant day zero, right? Like I've seen a few articles online already talking about like, oh, you know, we're opening up access to a game that doesn't exist. That's the point. The point is that we are going to build this together. And so while we've had, you know, Deez and I and the dev team, we've had very in-depth conversations every single day as we're building this foundation of where we would like to go with it. We're trying not to draw a lot of those lines in the sand just yet because we want you guys there as we're having those discussions, there having a voice in that, right? So if I'm in there fighting for a faster TTK and Deez is like, hey, let's slow down, right? Like, or let's do this, or maybe we introduce this element that would slow it down a little bit. You know, we also want voices like Billy and voices like Taco and Disney and all of them coming in and saying like, well, here's what I think and why, right? And having those back and forth conversations. But then most importantly, being able to then make a decision, get that into the build, have you guys download the build, play it, and then come back to the conversation. Be like, hey, it's not hypothetical anymore. We tried it out. What do we think? Did that feel good? Or did that feel like, you know, like a little too fast or a little whatever, right? And that is we are at the gateway right now of crossing that Rubicon of going from these being hypothetical conversations to them being literal decisions, being in a build, us playing it, and then coming back and having the same conversation, iterating on it, right? Something we normally do day in day as we develop games. And I'm sorry, get used to this long-winded answer, get used to it because I'm going to be doing this the whole time. This is what we are talking about, right? Is like, those are the conversations, those meaty conversations that I'm so excited to have that we normally have as a dev team every single day for 2 years, but they don't reach you until they're locked in, right? And so I'm really excited for that. And like, you've touched on a lot of things here, Billy, that I'm really into. And I'm excited to see the specific flavor of personality that our game evolves into, right? What we do know is we're 100% multiplayer focused. So everything we are doing is all about that competitive PvP multiplayer. And then we need to figure out what modes are right for us, what speed is right for us, what is the core locomotion. And we're definitely going to go in a direction that we like and then come back to the table and talk about like, okay, we have the base. How are we iterating? Where are we going from? So like, yeah. I'll be, you know, completely transparent with you guys that a lot of these very specific game questions of like, how does this work? It's like, that's what we're going to figure out together in a lot of ways. And anywhere that we can tell you, and I think it would be great, Deez, for you to say, well, here's how I feel today, right? But I just want everybody to be aware of like, that means that's our starting point, right? And then that's the start of the conversation. It's not the nail in the coffin.
Yeah, 100%. That's really good stuff. And I think another part of that is good is each of these build drops or flights that we're going to be doing, we'll get focused on those, and we'll get into, hey, this one we're focusing on these kind of mechanics. We're focused on this, and yeah, you can provide feedback on other stuff by all means. We're not going to exclude that, but we're going to also try to keep it very catered and measured on the things that we're going for, and a lot of that is going to be that minutia, and then we can engage in those kind of conversations back and forth, and that's what's going to be great about this whole process.
Awesome. Well, I hope you got a good enough answer there, Billy and Chair, you know. As if to have an easy segue, Turtle has given us an incredible question right next to Billy's and says, with regards to the game development process, what steps have been taken to ensure that founders or variants that their community feedback will actually matter and be utilized rather than be seemingly ignored like we've seen with so many other gaming companies over the last decade?
That's a really good question. And so just to give you a little inside baseball of the sort of challenges to doing open development, because let me say, like, doing open development, and I tell this to everybody who we're interviewing and that we're talking about joining the team, like, I'm very upfront with them, is we are deliberately choosing to make developing this game harder for us as a dev team. Because normally you have a lot of luxuries designing in a bubble, right? You don't have to worry about getting the build out to a bunch of different machines and optimizing it for people and sort of polishing areas that you don't have to worry about right now because that's going to come online later in development. There's all these things that you don't have to worry about during development because it's just the internal team playing it, right? Now, doing open development, that means that we now have to worry about a lot of this stuff, right? We need to get working builds on varying different PCs of different specs, and on consoles we have to pass certification, right? Which each platform has their own list of things that we have to make sure that it's stable and it works even when it's in an early state. But more importantly, to address specifically what you're talking about, Turtle, is because we want to facilitate actual constructive feedback and back and forth, there are also a few features that we normally wouldn't worry about at this stage, like those feedback loops, right? Because there's two ways that we're going to do this. There's the telemetry data that we're going to gather from the build. That is like the hard data of like, okay, we have heat maps, we understand where players are, we understand where the most activity is happening, we understand like, oh, this person spent this amount of time in the game. So there's certain information we can glean from data, right? And that data will be light early on because, the scope of the build might be light. And then later on, when we get the full multiplayer sessions and all of that, there's a lot more telemetry data to pull from. And then there is the subjective information, right? The opinion-based information, like one person thinks the TTK is fast, one person thinks it could be faster, one person thinks it should be slow and tactical, one person has an opinion about the recoil pattern of the AR, right? The default AR. Another person thinks like, this should be a melee-based game, whatever it is, right? I'm using extreme examples. That opinion-based feedback, we want to make sure that we have an equal balance between the ways to report that kind of stuff in game and the way we do that on the platform. And when I say the platform, I mean we are building the Foundation Pass or the Founders Access Pass and midnightsociety.com and that whole account system. That is the foundation for which all of this lives. Right. And the reason that we're sort of creating this account system in the way that we are is so that, and the reason we had that very detailed questionnaire to choose who are going to be founders is so that not only can we make sure that we pick people who have a shared interest in what we're trying to do for the long term, but also so that we can build that filter for, well, what perspective is that coming from? Right. So, for example, if someone's asking for like extremely competitive esports focused features and that's coming from a professional esports player, that makes sense, right? And that should be taken with that context versus somebody who's asking for something else and they're like, oh, like, I want a lot of RNG elements and I want, this to be that. And they're talking about a lot of things that sort of make the game more accessible and less competitive. Right. And if we see that information coming from an esports player, that's really interesting, right? Because it feels counter to what they would normally want versus if we see that coming from just an average casual player. And so this system, we're building a lot of tools. How we're building the platform is looking at, okay, how do we bring in information? How do we allow people to voice their opinion, share it? And then also how do we organize that in a way that's digestible and actionable? That's the most important stuff. So that's a long-winded way of saying that's a lot of the stuff we're looking at right now, or what are the tools we're doing. And I can tell you that there's a combination of stuff we'll be doing in-game in the build that allows you to report stuff that would be tied to your telemetry data, but then also look at things that we can do on midnightsociety.com where you can just come and drop your feedback in for us to review. Now, this is a highly iterative process. This is not like our game. Normally when you do a beta, right, you're doing it for marketing purposes. You're like, okay, we want to drum up our user base and we want to get people in preparation for launch, right? Or you're doing a technical beta where you're testing load testing and you're making sure that your backend's working and your matchmaking's working and all of that stuff. We're going to be opening up the build so early on that a lot of the stuff we're talking about are core decisions, core balancing, core things that are key to the gameplay itself. And so it's very different from doing a technical beta or doing a marketing beta. It's very much it's all about that opinion-based feedback in the early days, right? And so that's going to be the stuff that we talk about in these dev roundtables. Now, how we do it, we're going to figure it out, right? It might change over time. But I think in the early days, I want to be as transparent as possible. And that is also why we are limiting the amount of founders. Because if we were opening it up to the world and letting anybody they want play early, right? If we were going to have 1 million users come in, which would be great if we were trying to make the most money, we would just open it up to anybody who wanted to buy their way in. But we don't want to do that. We want to limit it so that we can have these very constructive conversations. And when we sit down for the roundtables, we can bring up that feedback, right? And keep it all public and be like, yo, Turtle said this. What do we think about that? Here's what we're thinking, right? And then we sort of all get a consensus, and then Deez walks away from that very informed, and he's like, all right, yeah, like they seem really into this specific direction. Let's try it, right? And then the dev team's job is to go incorporate that into the game, to try it out, to be like, oh, let's see what that feels like, right? Like, we're moving in this direction. They really want this feature. They want to prioritize this over that, whatever it might be. We try it out. We put it into the game. We update the build, and then we all play it again, right? That's the feedback loop that we're looking to get into, is taking that feedback that we take through the platform and the tools, making informed decisions about it. When there's questions or there's like nuance or debate, bringing that to the public forum. And when I say public, I mean the founders, making decisions, going back and iterating, right? Now, obviously we have a vision for what we want to do overall, right? So, and we really see ourselves as starting the conversation, like being like, hey, based on our expertise, based on our experience, this is the way we want to go. And then really fine tuning that based on everybody's involvement.
Incredible answer. Anything from you, Quinn?
Hey, man, you can't improve on perfection, man.
There you go.
I'm just here clapping my hands. We're good.
Right. Woo! I love it. I love it. Well, I'm going to jump down the chat a little bit. Ooh, Quinn, can you mute yourself, sir? I'm going to jump down the chat a little bit because I see this question come up a lot, especially after we launched the day zero talking points, after we launched the new website. And I just want to make sure that we answer this because this is one that I see a lot. This is from midnight, but spelled with an X instead of a G and GH, excuse me. Will we have to wait some weeks to receive our airdrop when the founders' applications are done, or do we get them immediately?
Seems like a good one for you, Robbie.
Yeah. Sorry, I was reading conspiracy chat.
As one does.
Yeah. So how the process works, I'll just give you the high level process because I think it's going to answer your question. So right now the applications are open. They are open for like 6 more days. That is just to give time for everybody, all the hardcore people who have been here from day one, make sure that they get their applications in, right? And then we have the approval process. So there's a lot of waiting that happens on making sure that it's bubbling the ones that we want to the top, right? And when I say the ones that we want, that's kind of a diverse answer because it is a combination of our ideal founder is people who have been here since day one, right? We made the announcement on December 14th. Like 30,000 of you were like, I'm there, right? I'm in. I love it. Let's go, right? You joined the Discord. You got involved. Then we did the ARG, the Midnight Protocol ARG. And then tons of you did that, right? The hardcore of the hardcore went through the ARG, and they were some of the first 500. That is why we had the airdrops, because we wanted to make sure that the hardcore, the most engaged, the most active, the most passionate about what we're doing, and the most vocal about like what they want to see, we're guaranteed in, right? So that airdrop means that you're one of the most active, earliest members of the Day Zero Society, and we want to make sure that there's no barrier to entry for you getting in. So you're going to automatically be approved. You get the highest score system. So when we go to the database and we're like looking at all the applicants, those 500 that got airdrops are at the top of the list, and they will be awarded the founders access, right? So they don't have to pay anything.
The first 500 that completed the ARG are in for the founder access.
Yes. So they don't have to pay anything. You do have to submit your application so you have a Midnight Society account, and then we will
to
airdrop
be clear,
you.
If you didn't hear,
all
the first 500
we will airdrop you along with the approved.
In case you didn't hear,
your link to mint your founders access, which means you then go to Midnight Society, the new section of it, and you'll be able to reveal your variant design, and then that's also where you will get access to daily questions, the platform where you download the PC version of the builds, or will eventually get your key to download it on consoles. So all that will happen on your founder's profile once you get the link. So that happens after all applications are approved, which is about I think it's a 3 to 4 week period. Because, right now we're at, last I checked a couple hours ago, we were at like 80,000 applications. We're fast approaching 100,000. Who knows where we will be in 7 days, right? So there's a lot to go through. Like I said, we have an algorithm that sort of judges them on a lot of criteria and sort of puts them in different buckets. So we're sort of like, okay, here are the top scoring player applications, and here are the top scoring developer applications. Here's the top scoring content creator applications. You remember the first question in the application is like, oh, well, what perspective are you coming from? Are you coming from a player perspective? Are you coming from a content creator? We don't want just all of one, right? We don't want 100% of founders to just be players. We definitely don't want 100% of founders to just be professional athletes or content creators. We want a nice diversity of all. So don't feel like you have to be in one of those buckets. We really want to make sure that we have a diverse set of opinions, right? We do want to know what the big content creators are playing because they have a good opinion on what's entertaining to watch from a passive standpoint, right? But also we want the player's perspective of what is the most entertaining to play. What do you want to play? And then we also want a developer's perspective of what they want to see technically in a game. So we really want that diverse set. So we need several weeks to go through those applications. And then once we go through all of those and pull and pick those 10,000 people who make up that diverse group of founders, that's when the airdrops will receive their links and the people who have approved will receive their links. The only difference between the two links is the airdrop people just instantly get it. They don't have to pay anything. And anybody who is not airdrop obviously have to, buy their founders access pass.
Yeah, that's awesome. And just to be clear about one more thing, you hit on something very important, that we're not just picking the best influencers with the highest following or esports stars. So those people that have been concerned whether they should take the time to go do the founder access pass, they're not going to pick me. They should just do it anyway because they might get picked to become founders. Is that correct?
Yes, 100%.
Awesome.
Right? We don't want it to sway too much in any direction, right? But I will say my gut tells me that the mass majority of the approved applicants are just going to be players, just normal players who are just coming to play and enjoy the game.
Players, ladies and gentlemen, players. There it is.
Yes, the thing we don't want is we don't want people who don't want to be invested in the community. They if somebody just wants it to, have it or sell it or whatever, they are not our ideal person. We want people who want to be actively involved, who have a strong opinion about what they want this game to be. And that is why we have an application process. If we just wanted it to be anybody, right, we would have just opened it. We would have just sold it like a normal game. That is not the goal here. Eventually the game will be out and commercial and, anybody can play it and spend money in it. But, we are a long ways from that point. Right now we're talking about the early access people.
Right. Right. Not resellers, not holders, founders. Very important. Love that. Well, here's a nice question from Killstrike25 that says, and we were kind of talking about how the founder access would work post once we pick everybody. Will the website have a login area specifically for founders that lets the founders access and see behind the scenes content? Is that where our voting is going to be? Or is everything going to be built into Discord itself?
Yes. The short answer is yes. So you will log into Midnight Society. That will be where your account is, that is linked to all your other accounts. And then that is where we will have questions. We will, that is where we host the build. So if you're on PC, you will download it there. That is also where you will access your token to download it on the other platforms that are not PC. But then a lot of stuff is going to happen in here. So once you connect your Discord account, that gives you access to the variant only channels here in Discord. And that's where a lot of the conversations are going to happen. Things like we're doing here. So right now, this is a pre-variant AMA. It's open to, the pre-variants because nobody is a founder yet. But eventually, a lot of these private conversations are going to happen in the private Discord channels, the variant only Discord channel, which you get access to by linking your Discord account to your Founders Access account. And so a lot of those conversations we'll hear. The good news is for people who do not become variants, again, this is still an open development process. So why those 10,000 have the seat at the table to sort of do the back and forth and give us feedback that we can sort of make actionable, they are meant to represent the voice of the wider community. So those conversations, those play tests that we do, those are not private, right? You might not be able to have access to download the build if you're not in that 10,000, but we will be streaming it. We will be showing that stuff. We will be creating videos out of it. So you will, even if you are not a founder, you will at least get to see that stuff that's happening, so that you can make sure that you are informed on what's happening. And then think of it as the founders are the representatives of the greater community.
Yeah, there's
Love
nothing
that.
secret there when we're doing those. Like, totally going to be open. Let people check it out, see it, watch it, stream it, all that stuff.
Love that. Well, I actually have a question for you, Quinn. It fell on my list. One sec. Always the live. Question from Corvito, probably for you, Quinn. What kind of anti-cheat is being looked at for Codename Project Moon?
If we were to tell you, then it would be easier to cheat, wouldn't we?
I see.
That's just me being,
Get him out of the Discord. Get him out.
just me being cheeky. Yeah, that is a conversation that is still we're looking at, but right now we're still looking at the high level decisions and the things about the game, the core of it, everything that players are going to be playing, from the mechanics to what's it going to be like when you're pressing the buttons or pressing the keys on your keyboard, all that kind of stuff, right? Controller in hand, everything from how the game will feel and play. But yeah, as with any online game, anti-cheat and making sure the sacredness of the game is maintained. So, yeah, that is going to be crucial to us. And that's something that we're going to be having conversations on, not just internally, what is the secret sauce or what are the things that we need to ensure that all games are played fairly, but also who are the other partners in the industry that have really good anti-cheat systems that also provide them, and also game studios. So that's how we feel really good about our space and what we're doing. Is the game industry as a whole is a tight one. And we feel like in talking with other partners and groups that we'll be able to find the good solutions that are catered to our game, because not every anti-cheat is a one-size-fits-all.
Yes, 100%. And I will tell you right now, the amount of like new anti-cheat tech and companies that have been sprouting up now that so many games are 100% multiplayer focused and are live service games, and people have thousands of dollars invested into their accounts. Like, this stuff in just the past year alone has been supercharged so much in the solutions available to developers. Now we're building entirely on UE5, and UE5 obviously has their easy anti-cheat, but I think there are a lot of additional layers that we can add on top of that we're going to be exploring. And this AMA is a good preview of how these conversations are going to go, except the only difference is like you guys are going to be able to be in a voice and we're all talking together, right? But like, if you ask my opinion, like, I am the most brutal. Like, if you're caught cheating once, hardware ban, get the hell out of here. Don't come back to the game. I don't care how much money you spent, right? Like, if you're gonna cheat, you've ruined our community. You are a toxic part of the community who has no place here. That's my stance, right? And then Deez's job is to talk me off the ledge. Deez's job is to be like, whoa, 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 whoa. We don't want false positives. We want to make sure we have a measured, balanced approach. We want to make whatever, right? And then, you guys individually, the founders, are going to have your own opinions that you bring to the table, right? And then through that conversation, through that exercise, we are going to find a solution, right? And that's the type of stuff we're going to be talking at these dev tables. Is we're going to say, hey guys, look, we had a meeting with these guys. They offer this solution. We think it's a really good approach for these reasons. What do you think? Is it too hard? Is it the risk of false positives too high? Like, those are the meaty dev conversations that we're going to be having, which I'm really excited for, right? But I can tell you right now, I'm going to start at the extreme. I'm going to start at 0 tolerance, 1 offense, get the hell out of here, delete your account, right? And then we need to talk about, like, is that right? Right? Or should we move somewhere else? But yes, what I can promise you today is that anti-cheat is one of the highest priorities because we are 100% PvP multiplayer focused. So that is one of the things that we have to get right. There are some things that are subjective of like, oh yeah, is that good or is that whatever? This is non-subjective. You have to get it right. And so I'm excited to see where we land in our specific approach.
Awesome. And I'm sure that's great for the community to know that we're working so hard on making sure anti-cheat is at the tippity top. You had said...
Except for the cheater community, of course.
Oh, of course. But get them out of here.
Get them out.
Get them out. Now, I know Rob had just mentioned UA5. Kukio has a lovely question saying, what engine is Project Moon running on?
Unreal Engine 5.
Oh, there it is. Kukio, you have your hand.
That's the engine and the tech stack that we're going to be building Project Moon off of.
Awesome. Just to make sure that's very, very clear. Speaking of games that Midnight Society members can play, Grimsy says, will the ARG continue?
That's that's an interesting question. Right now, there are not plans for it to continue. We plan to leave it up so that people can still run through it for fun. I'm really, that's one of those things that's organic, right? Like the ARG started out as a very simple thing, and it very quickly and dynamically grew because of the users here in this Discord, right? And I think that was pretty apparent for people who were going through it live as we were updating it each night. Like, it started as this simple thing that we update each night at midnight, and then it became more elaborate, and then we're coding, 15,000 lines of code into a bot and writing elaborate choose your adventure stories, and like, it really grew far bigger than I was even expecting it to, right? So I would not be surprised if there were continuations of it to sort of rally around things later on. But that's really gonna, that's something that happens organically. Right now, there are no plans to extend it, but plans change very quickly based on, what the community is into, right? There might come a time down the road where, Founders Access is the first access pass. Maybe we want to introduce, maybe we decide as a community that we want to open it up to more people once we get further along in development. And there's a second access pass, right? That brings people into the group and expands that 10,000. Maybe it makes sense to do an extension there. I don't know, right? But right now there is not a current extension plan for the ARG.
Got it. Well, kind of piggybacking on that, one of our OGs, Felipe, asks a extremely serious question, saying, did Sector 7 ever really exist?
Well, I mean, it existed in our hearts. It was definitely there.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. In our hearts and minds.
Maybe the real Sector 7 are the friends we made along the way. Got it. Understood. Well, in a similar question, I'll give Felipe one more since that one was so fast. What was the team's reaction to Space Bob?
I loved Space Bob. It took me a while to figure out what we were talking about. And then when someone pointed out that we literally just made a blank text spot on the website, and now it has its own identity and name and culture and personality, I loved it, and I can't wait to see where he shows up next.
Maybe he takes on a life of his own. Got it. Pivoting to some more, shall we say, direct questions. I've seen some back and forth on pre-variants, variants, founders. Jumper has a really great question that says, what, if any, involvement will the pre-variants have in development of the game, I assume?
I mean, it's what we've been talking about, right? I mean, this whole plan that we have in front of us is that's the core of what we're doing here. Is their involvement is why we have the whole pass, and why we are also doing the why you have to apply. And Rob has said it. You know, we're not in this to make money or anything like that. We're all in this to build a game and to do it in a way that has not been done in the industry before, which is alongside a community and a small community of representatives that speak for the larger community. So their involvement is going to be as much as they give us, and we're going to do everything we can to fulfill our promise of reaching back to them, giving them the builds that we talked about, and then have the roundtables, AMAs, things like this, having this type of access with developers on the game so early in the process. This to me is why we're doing all this stuff, and this is the type of interaction that the variants and founders are going to have on the game.
Yeah, but specifically to the question of the difference between a pre-variant and a variant, right? So think of it as we really look at it as claws, which is everybody who plays the game is a claw, right? Variants are people who have founders access pass. Pre-variants in our mind are that group that's in between, right? That group that's going to definitely be a founder as soon as they can get a pass, right? But they are also, in our mind, are sort of self-designated upper echelon of claws, in the sense of, like, I'll give you a very tangible example, right? Say we're sitting in a dev roundtable and we're doing a play test, and we're like, oh my God, this is really great, and we really like this, but like we just can't, like, we feel like we need more opinions, right? We need a larger group, a larger test group to sort of focus stuff, right? Or we want to bring a question or a specific dev roundtable discussion to a wider audience, right? To me, that's what pre-variants can become, is the fact that, like, hey, we need more. We need a more diverse sample set outside of this 10,000, right? The pre-variants to us are our identity. Or say we're doing an event, right? Say we're doing a real person event. Like, anybody who has sort of been with me on my development journey from, like, Call of Duty through Modern Warfare to now, I'm very big into big in-person events, right? Like, we did COD XP, we did, like, all these big things. Those normally require a large amount of numbers to accomplish what we're trying to do, right? Whether it's introducing a new element or something. That's where I see, when we're looking at that sort of list of, like, who do we need to include in this? That's where we really look at things like that. So to me, I think pre-variants is just a really nice way that we've allowed the community to self-identify as, like, hey, I am not a passive observer of this. I want to be an active participant, right? So if we do open up more access passes in the future, then that is, like, you know, those feel like they're the next in line, in my opinion. Same with all these applications that are going on.
Got it. Both great answers. Well, I have a fun one for you. Something we've been kind of keeping close to the vest a little bit, more than a little bit. Arctix has an incredible question with, can we get a definition for who the eyes are?
Oh, man.
Ooh.
Oh, man. Oh, man.
Ooh.
Yeah, so that's a really interesting one, right? So the eyes, and we're going to touch on a few other groups that we haven't talked about, right? But the eyes, the short answer I can give you right now, and yeah, I don't really give short answers, but the short answer is the eyes are the guilds, right? So we talked a little bit about in that variant survey, you might have seen some questions about like, oh, if there were guilds, like which one would you be interested in? Would you want one that deals with seasonal events, or would you want one that deal with characters, or do you want one that deals with weapon skins? And like there was a few options there, right? In my mind, somebody who joins a guild or participates in these industry guilds, that's the eyes. So think of them as like where claws are people who just enjoy playing the game, right? They're just going to play the game. They don't give a shit about anything else. They're like, dude, I just got off work. I want to play. Don't even talk to me about this stuff. I just want to kill things. I just want to shoot stuff in the face. Those are our claws, right? Our variants are the people who are like, I'm doing that. I'm definitely doing that. But I also want to have say in balancing issues and new things that you're adding and feature prioritization. Those are founders, right? Those are variants. And then the eyes are even a step further into that. The eyes are ones who are like, you know what? Like, anybody here who's been in a like an MMO guild will understand this reference, right? You take it seriously. I see a lot of negative people who have like taken the guilds in this weird, like cynical sense of like, oh, they want us to pay to work for them. It's like, dude, that's not what guilds are. Like, if you've ever been part of a guild, like, it's a commitment, but it's a fun commitment. It's like, hey, we're going to organize this and we're going to do this. And like, you've sort of just taken on a very active role in rallying people around a specific thing, right? You're scheduling things, you're involved in stuff, and what those specific tasks that you're doing are is really decided upon you and your friends who are in the guild, right? It's like, oh, hey, like a really good tangible example would be, hey, a member of the community who we call embers, right? Somebody who creates stuff, right? Say you're and anybody feel free to stop me if I'm going off rails right here, but say you are a 3D modeler or an artist, right? And you decide like, hey, on my own accord, I want to design a cool concept for a gun, right? You don't know how it works. You're not really thinking about it from a technical sense. You're just like, hey, this gun looks cool. Wouldn't this be awesome? Right? And you sign up as an ember, which means that you just want to creatively contribute to the community, right? In an unofficial way. And so we're like, oh, cool, you have talent. Come join us as an ember, right? Think of an ember as somebody who makes Zeroy. I don't know if Zeroy's in the audience right now, but you know, I've known of Zeroy for a long time. I know he's a very active modder. He's a perfect example of somebody who would be an ember, right? He's like, hey, I'm a map designer, modder in my free time. I don't do it professionally, but I do it for fun, right? I've made this really cool map. I think it would be awesome to see that incorporated in Midnight or in Project Moon somehow, right? He would submit it, and who he's submitting it to are us at Midnight Society Dev Team and the Eyes, right? And so that group's job, so he would submit it to the guild whose job it is to evaluate that type of user-generated content. And so it would go through this process of us discussing it like we do any other game feature of like, oh, wow, that's really cool. I love the flow of this map. I love the look of the map. I love the aesthetics of it. Like, it would be even better if, like, you know, we loaned Zeroy some of our guys, right? Like, if D's loved it, right? And he's like, oh, my God, I definitely want to incorporate that in the game. Then we have an avenue to incorporate that stuff in an official way. And then the guild's job is to figure out, like, okay, what does that mean for that specific ember? What does that mean for Zeroy? Of like, if we're going to include his map in the game, that opens up a can of worms, a lot of questions, right? Of like, okay, well, what does that mean? How should he be credited? How should he be compensated? What does that mean in the future of like officially incorporating UGC into the game, right? And is that even the right direction to go? That's the stuff that the Eyes sort of discuss, and they, you know, we can bring those conversations to the variants as well. It's a very interesting approach to what I believe is the future of AAA game development, where you have that base game, but you're also finding out tools and processes and flows to open up that UGC approach, right? And I think a lot of games have done it in interesting ways, right? You look at Halo with Forge, or you look at Fortnite with creative mode, is like what does our version of those things look like? And to me, that is where the eyes and the embers come into play. That was a lot of information.
That was a short answer, y'all. Remember, short answer. Okay. Now, that was probably the most interesting thing that our viewers have heard, because I know that we've been purposely vague on that because it's just a big thing to talk about. So many of you, I'm sure, have their eyes go big, seeing, oh my gosh, that's what that is. So just to sum up, the embers are what we're calling not just content creators, but the people that are call them the creatives. Is that fair to say?
The embers are the creatives, yeah.
Embers are the creatives, and the eyes, or also interchangeable with the industry guilds, are the entities organizing the what goes where from the community side. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
Got it.
That is a good way to do it. And just to be completely transparent, because that's what all of this is about, right? We are vague on the eyes because when you want something to be a discussion, when you want something to be sort of informed by what the community is feeling like, you don't want to bias it, right? So it's kind of difficult to have these conversations in a way that doesn't make you feel like, okay, I guess that's it and I hate it, I'm walking, right? It's like we want to open these things. Like, I think we all need to sort of get on the same page that these are conversations, right? And so when we talk about the eyes, all I'm saying is, like, this is how I want it to work. And as studio head of the company, I obviously have a lot of power and ability to make it that way, to make it so, right? But that's not how we want to operate. We don't want it to just be like, all right, this is how I want it, so this is how we're doing it. We want it to be like, this is what I want. I want to find a way to bring modders and content creators and user-generated content into the game. I want to create a process for that. And here's how I think it should work. Here's how I think they should be credited. Here's how I think they should be compensated. Here's how I think they should be involved. What do you guys think?
Got it.
That's how I want to structure this. And so that's why, you know, I don't want to just announce, like, this is how it works. I want to slowly walk us into these conversations of, like, here's how I think this benefits us as a community, right? Because I think if we have user-generated maps and modes and the ability to introduce cosmetics from the community, but I want to make sure that's done in a way that is helpful to the community and enhances what we're doing on the game development side and the design side and what Deez is doing, right? Fits within the universe that we've created.
Right.
While also being fair to the person who created the stuff. That's the most important element, is how do we make sure that it is fair for the person doing it and doesn't, like, we aren't benefiting from their work, right? The community is benefiting from their work.
Right. Well, that's probably a perfect segue into a couple other questions here. Taco, one of our OGs, says the Founder Pass allows the founders first priority, quote, into the eyes. However, do all the people with a pass get ensured entrance into the guilds, or do the first 500 receive like a higher priority?
The literal short answer is we don't know yet. Okay. We are figuring out that structure of guilds now. There's a million ways it could be done. And honestly, the way it's going right now, I feel like that topic is going to be one of the first things we need to decide upon as variants. Right? So once all the applications are done, all the variants have gone through the mist, to use Elden term references. Once we are in that room together, I think that's one of the things we need to tackle is, like, what's the best way to structure this? What makes the most sense? Because I have a lot of opinions on how you structure guilds. But right. the whole point of guilds and industry guilds in the eyes is that it's sort of community driven and guided. Right. And our job as Midnight Society is just to make sure that we are building the integration for those decisions in a way that is like builds up the community and answers the concerns of people, not to decide it for them.
And this is why the Founder Access Pass is so important, because the people that Midnight Society picks to be founders are going to influence what the eyes and embers are and do and help with, right? So it's not just oh yeah, you guys get to help found the game. There's way more to the Founder Access Pass than just you get a cool PFP and you get some merch, right?
Yes, and the thing is, it's like all of that stuff is not going to be for everybody, right? Some people will already be tuned out, right? And that is why we really want to make sure we're building an experience that is conducive to who you are, right? If you just want to play the game, be a claw, dude. Don't worry about all this stuff. If you want to be involved, right? Get a founder's access, be whatever. And if you want to be an eyes, like, dude, that's a commitment. But if that's what you want to do, like, let's do it, right? It doesn't need to be everybody. It's more about sort of creating these levels of involvement based on your interests.
Love it. Now, everybody knows that we've been hot in the presses because the Founder Access Pass and our Series 0 Claw Patch are dealing with, and in the case of the Claw Patch, is literally an NFT. So one of the more better worded questions coming in from Geeky Pastimes says, at any point, will an item created in-game, via collecting resources or some kind of challenge, winning a match, etc., if there's an item created in the game, can the end user sell that item outside of the game, potentially for real money?
That's a really good question. It's a very forward-looking question because a lot of that is specifically about the game and the gameplay, right? And a lot of what he's describing is what we call play-to-earn games. And what we're building is not a play-to-earn game, right? It is a PvP multiplayer shooter, as you would expect from, Halo and Warzone and all of those, but with our specific spin on the game mode, right? And the focus of it is, the reason you play the game is not to make money. The reason you play the game is not to create things. The reason you play the game is to play the game, to have fun, to get kills, to win matches, to do, whatever you think is fun of why you play a first-person shooter. That's the core of the experience, right? We are not and we covered a lot of this there's a blog post on the website now called like how all of this works. That sort of gets to the philosophy of our approach. And our approach is like, our job here is to create a really killer game, right? All of the blockchain NFT integration stuff right now is focused entirely on the founder's access stuff, right? And your account is sort of tied to all of that stuff. But if you don't care about that stuff, you're not having an interest, or you're even actively against it, then just play the game and don't worry about any of that stuff, right? Because you're never going to be forced or pressured or told to interact with any of that stuff whatsoever. And so like I feel like when people are like, oh, this is an NFT game or it's a blockchain game, it is not, because generally the definition of those things are like all of that gameplay level stuff is written to the chain, right? And that is not what we're doing. We look at all the game stuff as like I put in quotation off chain, right? Because it's all centralized on our database, just like your normal accounts. And you do whatever. So like you're earning stuff in game just like you earn stuff games now, right? You rank up your character, you unlock a new weapon, you do whatever. In theory, we haven't actually figured out our specific progression system, but in theory, it's very similar to those approaches. And so like this is not like I've seen Geeky specifically talking in this video of like, oh, this is a game where you play it to make money. This is not a game you play it to make money, right? This is a game where you play it to have fun.
Right.
The only difference is like I believe very strongly that when you buy things, when you buy games, and when you buy anything, you should be able to sell it. That's how I feel in general as a whole. And I can tell you personally, the reason I feel like that is because the way we've been doing it as an industry has fucking sucked for me as a player. Because I like supporting the games that I play. If I'm going to put 1,000 hours into the game, I'm going to buy stuff in that game, personally, right? I'm going to buy skins, I'm going to buy weapon skins, I'm going to buy tracer packs, I'm going to buy all that cosmetic stuff. That's just who I am, right? And what I don't like is I don't like the fact that if I move on from that game, right? Like Call of Duty Warzone is a perfect example. I have put countless hours into Warzone, right? Obviously, given my background, I'm a fan of Call of Duty. I put countless hours. I've bought a lot of stuff in that game as a player, as a fan, right? I've lost all of it because how they did their account system and all of that stuff. It's like, oh, well, that's tied to your Activision account, which is tied to your Infinity Ward email, and that's like, it's gone. You can't have it anymore, right?
And it's gone.
That's a ludicrous thing to me in this day and age, right? Like, digital ownership should be the same as physical ownership. If it's mine, it's mine. Let me do what I want with it. That's the nexus of how I feel and where I think digital entertainment's going in general. Now, how that translates into what you can do as a player, like we're figuring all that stuff out, you know. But on the gameplay side, on the game side, none of that stuff matters. Just enjoy the game as you normally do, and play it.
Got it. Love it. All right, let's see. Some more specific gameplay questions. Probably one for you, Quinn. From Bane, we have, will there be a perk system or a, quote, special ability system in the game?
Great one. That is something that we are still trying to figure out and iron out and work with the players on. I could tell you, for me, things that I like is, I like abilities, I like gadgets, I like things like that, and something that we are going to try to push for is verbs that help players have fun and find success to cater to different play styles that aren't always just one way to play. And so that is something that you could look forward to in Project Moon, is a way that will cater to different types of play styles and players. How that manifests itself, we have some ideas, but we also want to get ideas from you guys as well. And that's why we have the Founders Access program. And so that to me is what gets me excited, is not just that program, but also this game, this title, things that we want to do. How do we want to have different play styles and reward different play styles? If someone wants to be an amazing shot and have incredible gun skill to win, we're going to do what we can to reward that. If someone wants to, I don't know, off the top of my head, thinking like, hey, stealth or something where they want to be a little bit more sneaky and win, we want to find ways to cater to that as well. Or someone that does neither of those things and want to be a way to take care of their teammates, to give them ammo or to heal, or however that works out. We want to cater to that kind of play style as well. But there's, with those bones, that framework, there's still a lot of stuff that needs to be figured out. And that's the exciting part of this, is we still have work to do. We're excited for it, and we're moving like we got a purpose. But we want to start with the Day Zero community and get people involved early as well.
Right. And we've said this a couple times on this call, but that's why the Founder Access Pass is so important. That's why y'all that are listening now, y'all that are listening in the VOD, even if you're listening to YouTube later, definitely go check the link. Sign up if you haven't signed up already, because all these questions about, is this going to be more like Call of Duty? Is it going to be more like Tarkov? Is it going to be like Quake? All of those, we're looking for the founders to help guide the not general principle of the game, but we're looking for y'all to help tell us what exactly you want in the best damn AAA shooter you've ever seen. Okay? I see a lot of these questions about BR or Hunt. Is it like Fortnite? Y'all, become a founder and you'll be able to have say in that kind of conversation. So here's more of a, thank you. Here's more of a top level one. And sorry, that was the last question was actually from not Bane. It was an acronym for B4 Anyone. Thank you for that. Sorry about the mispronunciation. This coming question from Zillion. What inspired the idea of Midnight Society?
The idea?
The whole kit and caboodle?
A hell of a question, Rob. How long do you have, you know?
Yeah, I can give you like the Nexus story, right? So like all of us have known each other for a while in different capacities, right? Like I worked with this is a good test of how we talk about Guy when we're not talking about Dr. Disrespect.
Mm-hmm.
I worked with Guy on Call of Duty for MW2, MW3, is when we were working with Sledgehammer, where Guy was a multiplayer designer, working on multiplayer maps. And then, you know, we've known D's for a while, and then we've all sort of been doing our own things in a AAA space, right? Like I've been focused a lot on development. I've built some like game publishers. I've started some game funds, funding indie developers and stuff of that sense. D's is like, you know, a hardcore developer. He's been focused on building some incredible franchises that entire time. And then Doc sort of, you know, is doing Doc stuff, right? And I use Doc now because like Doc is Doc. And you know, doing all the stuff that Doc does. And then recently, you know, I think out of frustration, because even when we weren't even when I stopped working on Call of Duty and I went off and doing other things, I was still playing Call of Duty, right? Same with Doc. Like when he stopped working on Call of Duty, he was still playing Call of Duty. And as players, we started to get frustrated because a lot of these games that we love, right? When we criticize things, and I'm sure you guys are a lot of the same way, when we criticize things, it's not coming from a malicious place. It's coming from a place that we love these things. We are emotionally invested in these games. We are investing the little free time we have to play these experiences. These are the things that we do. And so when they're not right, or like they're so close to being right, that is infuriating as a player, right? And so everything we do comes from that perspective of as a player, right? Because I hate when people talk about money in game development. I hate it because I don't give a shit about it, right? Like I've made a ton of money in games. I've walked away from a ton of money in games because it wasn't meeting what I got into games to do. I didn't even know games were a job when I first got into them. I didn't know you could get paid to make games. I just happened to do it because I loved it, right? And so Midnight Society came about because we were frustrated with how these games were not meeting the specifics of what we wanted, right? It's not that they were right or wrong. It's not what we wanted. And we saw a better way of doing it because the old way of doing it has become stale, right? You can't design in a bubble anymore. You can't not include the other people like us who have opinions and voices and passions about like how it's going to go. And also the fact that games are entirely multiplayer focused now, which means the meta is going to change, right? How people play the game is going to change based on their mood and the collective like direction of the community. And games need to be responsive to that. Rebalancing, introducing new weapons, introducing new mods, rebalancing those weapons and mods as people learn how to play them or, you know, get competitive with them. It's an ongoing cycle, excuse me, that require a constant back and forth between the players, the developers, the collective community, and then making sure that's being represented. So Midnight Society came out of that frustration of that. We didn't feel like that was happening at the scale and speed that it needs to be happening. And we are very much put your money where your mouth is people. And so we're like, listen, if the franchises we love and play every day aren't going to do it, then we are going to do it. What does that mean? That means we have to form a company. That means we have to build the team with the people who believe in what we believe, right? So we got the ideal together. We decided to, you know, pour millions of our own money into it. And then, you know, so like we talked as a group. We're like, are we doing this, right? Deez is like, hell yeah, we're doing it. Yeah. I'm like, dude, you're working on Halo Infinite. What's going on here, man? That's a great franchise. But we could all be doing other stuff, but we wanted to do this together, right? And so we did it. We pulled the trigger. We launched it. And then now it's all about building up the foundation that allows us to achieve what I just talked about, right? A way to include everybody, a way to bring people into the fold, but in a structured manner. Because if it's not structured, it's not actionable, right? Like, we need a way that sort of brings in the information so that we can make group decisions on it, get those into the build, play them again. And so that's what we're focusing on now, is building out that foundation.
Everybody died too many times to dead silence, and they're tired of it. We got it. We understand, you know.
a sensitive subject.
Some PTSD, you know. We are coming up on over an hour on this AMA. Some incredible questions so far. I think we have time for 2 more. Let's try to have quicker answers. These have been good answers, Rob. Don't get me started, okay? Cappy asks, will there be any merch soon?
There's good answers, but can we just be a little bit shorter?
Yes or no? You know what I'm saying? People want to wear Space Bob merch. Can we make it happen?
Yes, there will be merch soon. So one of the perks of the Founders Pass is that we are making Founders exclusive merch that will be dropping. Of course, there'll be other non-exclusive merch that drops. But I will tell you, it hasn't been our major focus or priority. Like, we've been focused on building the platform, building the game, and we've definitely started exploring what does that first group of merch sound like. So that is perfect. If you guys have suggestions on what you want to see, I honestly don't know what you want to see. Is it shirts? Is it hoodies? Is it socks? Is it mouse pads? Like, I don't know. I don't think there is a wrong answer, but like, let us know if there's stuff that you're interested in, and we will make it happen.
Yes. It's almost like we've been focused on building a damn good game and not the extra stuff. Yeah. Fantastic. We see the chat scrolling. We understand you want Space Bob on merch. Don't worry. Last question. And this is probably the most important one for those of you coming in from the Champions Club. Batu asks, aim assist and audio, what can you tell us?
Everything we can have the best audio in a video game shooter arena.
Boom. There it is. Well, Rob, Quinn, thank you for answering these community questions. This is not going to be the last AMA we do. Thank you to all the community members that participated, that asked questions. Thank you again for participating in the Day Zero event. If you haven't already, make sure, if it's not clear to you now, I really don't know what else I could say, sign up for the Founder Access Pass over at midnightsociety.com. The links are all over the Discord. They'll be in the YouTube description. If you have questions, we have the hashtag frequently asked questions section that'll take you where you need to go. Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Quinn. Thanks, everybody else. Great time today.
Thanks, everyone.
And there you have it, the first ever developer AMA presented in the Midnight Society Discord from the Midnight Society staff to all of their Day Zero community. Let me know what you guys thought in the comments below. They went over quite a few things in that AMA, some of which are very important, interesting to hear. They did address some of the controversy brought up by other creators such as Geeky Pastimes. It's definitely interesting to hear the insight directly from the studio head himself and see kind of where they see things going in the future for this company. So again, if you guys enjoyed the video, make sure you hit that like button, make sure you guys hit subscribe, ring that bell so you get all notifications from the channel in the future. And don't forget that I stream pretty much daily over at twitch.tv/Arctix. Again, my name is Arctix. Thank you for watching. You guys take care of each other and stay frosty. Have a good one. Thanks for watching.